Here I am speaking to my good friend Richard Bay. I let him down about two or three times, and I was actually surprised when he said yes the last time. I thought he couldn't, he hated my guts, but now I have Richard Bay. And you remember Richard Bay? I mean, if you're a TV junkie
Oh,
and you go
please
back,
don't go through all of this again.
no, I'm
Yes,
not just
yes.
a little thing, and you go back a ways, you'll know who Richard Bay is. And not only that, a radio personality people forget. That's all. All the accolades are done, Richard, I promise.
All right. I didn't even make it a Hulu documentary on talk shows of the 90s. I started the whole thing. We were the first ones, but we were doing it as like a satire, a joke, where I would dress up like Dick Bay, Private Eye, Sergeant Dick Bay and his wimpy husbands, the Wheel of Torture. I mean, it was, and then everybody just went off and did it in a more, not that it was serious, but they did it in a way without any sense of comedy in it.
You know how many people plan their mornings so they can watch that show? They did their dishes at 9 o'clock so they can watch at 11 o'clock. They took the kids wherever they had to take the kids and they got back because you had to watch
I don't
those
I,
things in real time. Real
I don't know
time,
about
Richard.
that, but what I do know is the number of people who come up to me these days and say, I used to cut junior high school to watch your show
There you go.
is an incredible amount.
There you go. And every day was an adventure. You never knew what was going to happen.
Well,
And
I never knew what was going
talk
to
about
happen.
improvisation, Richard.
That was
Everything you
improv,
did
yeah.
there. Yeah.
I never knew what was going to happen next. I
And
mean,
the
you
audience
watch these,
members,
the audience members, you never knew what somebody was going to say, what was going to happen, during the course of the show. Fortunately, we didn't have a lot of real violence. We had pies in the face. We had the wheel of torture. We had the concoction. All of these things ended up, or a lot of these things ended up on Fear Factor, which was Joe Rogan's show.
I
But
know.
there's no private property on television. Everything is, in fact, there were things on my show that I took from Sábado Gigante, which is a Latin American talk show, or European talk shows, because they were way ahead of us.
They stole from you right and left.
Well,
They
yeah, but I
stole
stole.
every, you stole from them, I guess, to a point,
Yeah,
but they
yeah.
stole from you a lot more.
Well, the thing is this, they got rich and I didn't. I was,
You did pretty well.
what? No, I listen, I'm not complaining because I was never into any of this for the money, but my my yearly salary was probably the craft services uh charge for Rosie O'Donnell's show. I mean, I
And
never,
Rosie had half the talent that this man had, if that much.
well, then there was, I mean, when I went in to negotiate, I said, Montel Williams is making this, I don't know when it was, 2 million. And they said, yes, but Montel Williams was a known entity. I said, a known entity? I was on WCBS in New York. I was on KYW in Philadelphia. We were national. We were on in Los Angeles twice a day at that point. But anyway, so
Hey,
I never
when I
had a
look,
million. I made $1 million in the last year, but I never had $1 million salary. I made up the next by doing college appearances, and actually it wasn't even a million. I said, this is my joke. My father always wanted to be a millionaire. And in 1997, I guess it was, or 96, it was one of those 2 years. I made $985,000.
oh,
And
you're
I
just
paid
short.
it just I said, this is God's trick. Like, you want to be
You're,
a millionaire? Forget
you're
it.
15 away,
And then
15,000.
I had to pay $475,000 in taxes.
Of course.
But it was enough.
Uncle Sam. I know. But you know something that when and you don't remember this, we went through this, but when I said this, I'm 30 years old watching your show, 1990. And one day I go over there. I said, Richard Bay actually occupies two, count them, two apartments on in prime territory, 57th Street, Manhattan. He's got to be doing something right. He's got to be doing
There
something
was,
right.
well, the thing that I did right was buy it when New York prices were incredibly depressed. I bought it in 92. Nobody wanted to live in New York. The people who had bought it bought both of these apartments. They were joined together. Boy, the scene of so many great parties.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but anyway, yeah, they bought it for 865. They were asking 765. I told the realtor I want to pay 550. He came back and said, "Well, how about 685?" I said, "I told you 550." I mean, and this went on. They couldn't sell it. And then finally he came to me and said, "They said they'll sell it for 550, but they won't give me a commission. Would you throw in $15,000?" And so I said, when we're talking about half a mil, sure, 15,000 is nothing. So I got both those apartments at the time with unobstructed views. You could see the East River, you could see the Hudson, you could see all the way down to Jersey City and the World Trade Center. Gigantic bay windows, 1,700 square feet. Two apartments, two one bedrooms joined together, 565. Now it's called
That's when
Billionaires Row.
Oh yeah. That's when things, if you can call that affordable, that was affordable for New York City circa
Well, it was affordable
1990.
for me at the time because, I was the talk show was just starting to take off. But it was 1992. You had the riots in Crown Heights. You had David Dinkins as mayor, and there was chaos everywhere. There was a police officer shot and killed at the ATM right across the street from where I lived. I mean, it was, and it was New York at almost as low as the 1970s.
Mm. Yeah, it
Because
was
I love
rough.
it was rough. It's 70s were a little bit rougher because we were dead broke as a city. Remember Ford to New York dropped dead? That was the headline
Mm.
in the Daily News. But I love
Yeah.
New York. I mean, I if I had my druthers, I'd be in New York right now. But in fact, I went up there to see if I could, get an apartment and go back at one time. And they have something called the 40 times rule. You have to have 40 times a monthly salary and yearly income, which
40,
means,
40. That's unreal.
yeah, which means that if you unless you find a private owner of somebody who owns a brownstone or um, what's the other way you could do this? Because that's what I found a condo that I could have moved into, but it was 550 square feet, and and with a Murphy bed. Good luck. It was on 57th Street, but I said, my
Mhm.
God, this will be okay in the spring and summer and fall, but in the winter, I'm gonna feel like I'm John Gotti in a jail cell. It's
Hey, those
500.
of us who like to have fun used to do our business on the West Side. The East Side
Yeah.
was like foreign territory. If you went to the East Side with the hoity-toity people there, it wasn't quite the same vibe. I much preferred your neighborhood.
Oh yeah, and where I lived was perfect. I mean, Central Park was right around the corner. I would, I love to go to the theater. I used to be an actor, so I mean, I'd look at the clock and it would say 7:40 with an 8 p.m. curtain, and I could walk and make it to the theater and be in my seat by 8 o'clock. I mean, I loved it. That was it. And selling it broke my heart, but I did so, and I got a good price for it. I mean, I made on the sale. I, well, I made it sold for about $1 million more, close to.
Now, did you go for your taping in Secaucus?
That's correct. In fact, my accountant said, if you just move to New Jersey and order a limo every night, you'll save on your taxes because it's 10% off your salary in New York City. Some goes to the state, some goes to the city. So you're losing 10%. So as much as Jerseyites complain about their taxes, New York is the worst for
Oh yeah.
taxes. But look at what you're getting. the museums, the theater, the culture. And I just wrote down something yesterday that I read in a book I'm reading. My name is Lucy Barton. And she said, oh, hell, where the hell is it? Wait a minute. Because I don't want to.
All
I
right, go
don't
ahead.
want
Go ahead. I'll fill the time. Go ahead. Find it.
to. Okay, I don't want to screw it up. Now I just knocked the microphone. Is the microphone still working?
Yeah, I still hear you.
Okay, hold on. Because the wires everywhere. Let's see.
You might as well just yell out the window the way we deal with things. I'm 65, Richard's 75. What do you expect, folks?
Is the
We are
microphone
not
still?
techno. Yes, it
Is the
is. Yes,
microphone?
it is.
Okay, hold on.
Yes, it is.
All
All right.
right.
And I know him as Richard. He called those some of those little the things that he did. I remember now that he brought it up. Dick Bay, private detective. And let me tell you, I would sit there. My mother would have this show on in her apartment. Once in a while,
This is the greatest gift. Oh, come on, Kyle. No. Kyle, I'm doing an interview. I'll call you when it's over. Love you. Bye. Ay, 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 ay. 25 times a day he calls, but he's
that's
got
all
his
right. He needs you.
problems.
He needs you.
All right. The microphone's working?
Yeah, you're working well.
Okay. So this is the book. My name is Lucy Barton, but
Elizabeth,
I
yeah,
thought I came across this and oh, come on. I yellowed it out. Where the hell is it? Oh, come on. I should have put it on the side. Hold on. Here. All right, here. I love New York for the gift of endless encounters. And that's what I mean, in New York, you walk down the street, you stand on line in a theater, you start talking to people. Before you know it, you're telling each other stories. They don't become your lifelong friends, but they become interesting elements of oh, this is the day I ran into. Sometimes you do run into old friends because you're walking everywhere. And the other thing is, New York has this feeling that anything could happen at any moment.
mm.
That you're walking down, there's a sense of anticipation. I don't know what'll happen. Maybe somebody will walk up to you and say, you know what? You're going to be a model, you know? Would you come to my? That's what happened to Jennifer Lawrence. She was out, I don't know, in one of the parks, and an agent came up and said, I'd like you to come to my office and we'll send you out, to have photos taken. And she's one of the biggest stars. You never know you never know if you're going to be mugged. You don't know what's going to happen, right?
It's so true. The Central Park served as Schwab's drugstore in a certain way. You had beautiful people there, and people scouting out these beautiful people, and they'd
Yeah.
say, you have that certain look about you. They may call you over and throw a spiel at you, like you just mentioned.
Well, I'm sure it happened to you. I mean, a guy with your
You know what
cheekbones.
happened to me? You know what happened to me? One
What?
time, I'm heterosexual. One time, this guy who had monkey business on his mind, now I'm pretty savvy, relatively savvy. He threw something at me, and I said, "This is far too good to be true. This has to be a ploy." But he played this game for about 2 weeks, and I bought it, and he turned out to be a complete phony. That's just one that pops into my mind. And again, you have to be New York savvy to deal with these people.
Well, listen, when I was an actor and I was young, and if I say so myself, in my 20s, I was a handsome lad. I had the casting director for Three's Company. They were doing a spinoff called Robin's Nest. And I went
Mhm.
in, to have my audition taped. And he said, if you'll be my boy, for a week in LA, I can get you this part. And he actually took the script and was swatting me on the butt as I said, oh, come on, man, come on. My agent, Michael Bloom, when I signed with him, he said, I'd like to take you out to dinner and talk about the future. We went out to dinner, and he said, "Really, I think you're so cute. You're like a puppy dog." And I said, "Michael, there's not a snowball's chance in hell. I'm not attracted to men." And he said, "Why?"
Yeah.
And he had two theater tickets. And at the end of the night, he said, "Here, if you want to call somebody and have them go with you, take the theater tickets. I'll just go home." And to his credit, I have to say, he was a great agent for me.
Well, you know, back in
So
those days, if somebody gave it a shot, you couldn't hold
that's
it
right.
against them. As long as
That's
they
right.
take no for as long as they take no for an answer, you're okay.
That's right. No, that's true. That's true. In fact, yeah, that's true. They in Harvey Weinstein was a different matter because
Oh, that's
he
a
went a
whole
lot
different
further.
animal.
That's right. He went
He
much
didn't like to
further than
take no
just
for an answer, Richard,
he
you know?
didn't just proposition, you know? Right.
That's an
So
interesting thing because he's sitting in prison and he's in poor health. And where does it get now? I know he did terrible things. I'm not saying he didn't, but where does it get us holding him captive just to pay him back, make sure he pays his dues? I mean, at this point, let him out, let him run free, let him
well,
out. What harm is he going to do,
What
Richard?
happened to Kevin Spacey too? Kevin
Yeah.
Spacey took his shot. He didn't rape anybody, but his career was destroyed. The worst, I think, is Frank Langella. And Frank Langella was making a movie for television. And there was a scene where he was supposed to be intimate with a young lady. And they had an intimacy coordinator. That's what they have now in the scene. And the
Yes.
intimacy coordinator said, "Well, when you go to kiss her, you can put your hand here, and the other hand should rest here, and then move forward and just lightly touch her lips." And Frank Langella said, I'm an actor. What I sell
That's right.
is spontaneity.
Yeah.
I react to things. I do things in a spontaneous fashion. And, he said, this whole intimacy coordinator thing, it's so ridiculous. And afterwards, the actress accused him of, molesting her and this, I don't know,
Mhm.
not molesting her, but being inappropriate.
Inappropriate touching or something.
Right. And they told Langella that if he apologized to the intimacy coordinator, he could come back, but he wouldn't apologize. So that's
Good.
why you don't see Frank Langella in anything. And to tell
Now,
you the truth,
did
listen,
he pass away, Richard?
no,
Oh, okay.
he's
He's still
just
around. Okay.
he's just, as they say, canceled.
That was in the throes of the Me Too movement, I would assume, right?
Right. James Franco, too. When was the last time you saw James Franco? He was
He's on
accused.
Netflix. He's on Netflix right now with one of
It's an
his
old
new
movie.
features. Oh,
No,
that's
it's
an
an old,
oldie?
what? Yeah, it's the Stephen
The
King
one where he
book.
goes back, the JFK thing?
Yeah. Oh, that's from
Oh,
like
I
20
thought, see
years
now, I
ago.
thought that was a new one.
No, that's
I got fooled.
I read the Stephen King book is like this thick. It's called
Right.
11/22/63 because it's
Hmm.
about a guy going back to try to change. And I love time travel. And the book is incredible. The book is much better than the series because the series
Yep.
had aired years ago. But I'm watching now Timeless, which is an old series, not an old series from like 2018, and it's on Prime, and it is so much fun. And these people there's a guy that's going back to try to change the United States. So he goes back to the Apollo moon landing, and he goes back to the Revolutionary period. And these people go back. The Hindenburg is one place, and the CGI is. I don't know if they had CGI in 2018. I guess they did because it's incredible that you see the Hindenburg exploding, and then there's a group of government agents who go back in time to try to stop this guy from destroying the United States.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it is so much fun. I laugh at it every night, and they pick time, not every time period. Some time periods are what you would expect, the Alamo, but they go back and they meet Judith Exner, with JFK,
Oh, yes.
and they get involved with her. They get involved with that woman from Hidden Figures, who was the black woman in the basement who did all the mathematics
Hmm.
for the Apollo, for all of the missions,
Yeah.
for the other people. And they go and they use her to try to thwart the other guy. So, I mean, there's all sorts of these interesting twists. It's called Timeless. And let me tell you, you'll just laugh your head off. And the three main actors who go back in time, one is a black actor. And every time they're sending him back, he's going, do you know they had slavery at that time? Or he's going back and it says no coloreds allowed.
Right,
So he
right,
has a
right, right.
commentary on all these periods.
Well, that James Franco thing was very interesting. But now, what's funny with the brain? Now that you said it was 6 years old, it's not quite
No,
as
it's
good to
more,
me
it's more
anymore.
than 6 years old.
I thought it was about
I
2019 or so, or 2018. No?
Well, I don't, I can't say for a fact. I just remember watching the first two episodes and saying, God, I read that book and the book was so fantastic. And this is like
Well,
eating a hamburger.
Chris Cooper played that first scene. I didn't care
Yeah.
for the first part. It got better. And then it kind of tailed off a little bit to me.
Well, there's so
But
much stuff about Lee Harvey Oswald in the book that
yeah.
I wasn't aware of, and his connections to all these different people, communists, and Marina Oswald is in the book and is a character. And it's Stephen King, who really, I mean, Stephen King, when he writes a book, you are inside the minds of his characters. And if you don't care about a character, then there's no point in reading the book. Like for me, John Grisham,
Mhm.
he's great at narrative. He's great at plot. It's the plots are fascinating, but to me, I could never visualize the characters. They all
Yeah.
seem to be the same person, but that's not true with Stephen King. He fleshes them out. Fleshes is the wrong word because it has to do with creating the personality of the mind in these people.
Yeah, these are real people that he's writing about. You assume they're real people. And
Oh,
Stephen King, listen to this, Richard.
no,
Stephen
remind
King,
me, remind me. I want
yeah.
to tell you something before we go, but go ahead.
Oh,
Stephen King.
definitely. Stephen King, a Maine resident for many, many years. In fact, every one of his projects, you hear the state of Maine mentioned in these projects
Sure,
all the
sure.
time. He's never forgotten where he came from. Lived about four doors from my wife, and used to run a laundry when before he made something called Carrie, maybe back. What's
Right.
that? He worked at a laundry. He did not run this laundry, she tells me. And he's struggling. He's struggling. Little did they know they're sitting there with a guy that's going to be as
Oh,
popular
sure.
as prolific as anybody that you've ever seen. And I heard, and he worked with my wife's mother, and I'm told that he was a very cantankerous guy at the time. But
Yeah.
in time, he
He's
gave
still
back so much to
cantankerous.
Maine. I guess
But
so. I guess so.
he deserves to be cantankerous.
Yeah, he's got the right to be cantankerous,
He's
right?
an artist and a genius.
Well,
And
and
he's in Maine.
he wrote some things, Richard, that we forget about. He wrote a thing called Dolores Claiborne that was a
Oh,
great
sure,
movie. I thought
sure.
that was an excellent movie, and nobody talks about that. When they talk about Misery, they talk about the others, but very rarely do
Well,
you hear some of these others.
he just had two books adopted. One of them, one's called The Long Walk or something, and I didn't see
Yeah,
that. But
that's
the
it.
other one
That's
is
it.
the something of Craig or something, and it's about a guy who's dying. It's about a guy who all around him, the world is disappearing.
Hmm.
And at the very end of the first segment is incredible. This guy is in his yard and they're watching the stars blink off. And then the moon blinks off. It's so Twilight Zone. And don't want to spoil it for people, but there's a real twist at the end where you find out what's going on. And it's a fantasy I think I've had, and I'm sure many people have had. But what I wanted
But
to tell you was I
yes,
watched your treatise on
WABC radio, and I loved it. I thought you were way, way, way too kind to many people.
Too kind. I thought you were going to
Yes.
say I was too harsh.
No,
Okay.
too harsh. You gave them an 8.5. Are you kidding me? Some of
Did
them
you see?
deserve
Do you
a
see what that
4.
station? Do you see what that station's become?
Of course. I check it all the time.
Just a rallying point for Trump, a campaign headquarters for Trump. It's ridiculous. I don't despise the president, but it gets a little bit much, doesn't it?
Well, I despise the president,
I know
so
you do. That's why I set you up because I know that's a perfect segue into the next bit here.
he's a very
Yeah, I
sick
know.
man, and he's
But now,
inflicting the
in what way?
sickness
In what
upon
way? How do
us.
you see it, Richard? What's the latest that really got your goat?
Nothing gets my goat because I understand who he is. So, taking Greenland, insulting England and France, who had so many people die in World War II, like they did nothing, during the war. I mean, the best, when he gave that speech in Davos, the best analysis I heard somebody on TV say, what you just saw is a man who never read a book, let alone a history book. And, that's who he is. He's a
Mhm.
liar. He's a narcissist. When he wants things, he either buys them or he threatens to get them or he grabs them, whether it's a pussy on a woman that he sees. Um, it's like it's like a child, I remember when Kyle was little, he'd go, I want Coca-Cola. I said, well, your mother and I love you, and we'll get you a glass of milk and we'll get you some orange juice if you want, but you're not going to have more sugar because you're hyped up. I want Coca-Cola. You know,
Yeah.
it's childish.
Do you see any
And
redeeming qualities at all?
redeeming qualities.
Meaning,
Listen,
meaning, do you see a good intention behind some of these things you disagree with, where
no,
he's
no,
actually no?
no. Is there any magnum, what's the word? Magnanimity in his character? I don't think so. I mean, even Charlie Kirk's widow said, I forgive him and I love my enemies or whatever. And Trump said, I don't. I hate them.
Now
Where
the
are you?
thing is
Where are
that
you? What's your redeeming quality? What
well,
redeeming quality of
meaning that if I don't have a malicious bone in my body, people would tell you that I may
right?
have other faults, but I'm not out to get anybody. But that's what I mean. I mean, sometimes you could say the guy's misled. The guy really is not educated. You mentioned it, not educated enough to do certain
But he's
things.
also malicious. He has nothing but malicious bones.
Right. Well, I'm asking you, do you think that he does things for what he feels is the right reason? Or do you think
No,
it's just self-aggrandizement?
that's right. I think he does things because he wants something, or he wants to hurt somebody, or he wants to do something and he feels he's being restrained. That's what he wants. He doesn't sometimes you'll say, well, somebody did this out of the goodness of their heart.
Right.
What did he do out of the goodness of his heart that you could mention? And this
Well,
goes
he'll
way
yeah.
back. I mean,
Mhm.
this goes way back. I mean, I don't think he ever did. Oh, maybe the Woolman Rink, but I don't know if he did that out of the goodness of his heart because he wanted it to be named the Trump Rink.
You have to admit that he got something done there that couldn't get done for years.
Oh,
So he
really?
actually
So did
stepped in and got
Hitler.
something done.
Oh,
Well,
Hitler. Do you
you
know
said it, not me.
Hitler created the Autobahn. It was the first highway of that kind in the world. He created the Volkswagen for an affordable car for the German people. He went to a country that had 6 million unemployed when he became chancellor. By 1939, it was down to, what was it, 300,000, I think, unemployed. I mean,
Yeah.
Hitler, he took over a country that was belittled and abused by the world and the Allies. And by 1939, it was respected. What a great man, right? No, you have to look at the totality of everything.
I get you.
Just because he accomplished something.
I get you. Well, now this is the reason why, if Richard would want to work on the radio,
I
you would
can't.
have to fall in lockstep with the MAGA crowd. You can't go on there
Well,
and have an opinion that differs from theirs. You understand that?
well, that happened. Over the years, I've been asked to come on and do commentary for a long time. I mean, I have tapes where I was on Fox News over and over again because I was critical of the character of Bill Clinton. And they loved to have me on because I thought a president, ha ha ha, should have exemplary character. And I didn't think Bill Clinton did. As soon as I started to criticize the WMD evidence and Dick Cheney and George Bush, I was persona non grata. There was what was his name? Lieutenant Colonel who was on all the time with Sean Hannity. You'd say, "This is our good friend, Colonel." I can't remember his name, but he was always on Fox News. And then he started to speak out about how idiotic a proposed war in Iraq would be. And I ran into him years later and I said, what happened? You used to be on Fox News all the time, just like me. He said, yeah, we're both persona non grata. And here's another one. A guy that's been my friend for years and does have talent. Frank Morano used to have me on at 2 o'clock in the morning.
I heard those shows.
What's the big effing deal?
Right.
And there was this thing, Frank Morano, lovers and haters. Well, it's almost all haters. There's about 2 lovers, 2 sensible people, and about 80 haters. I mean, one guy was going on, I love to hear Richard Bay on the radio because I move my bowels and then I take a big dump right after.
Oh my God.
I mean, that's the level of people he
know.
was attracting, It was a cesspool of people. But anyway, he stopped having me on. All of a sudden, he used to have me on.
Do you
I go
think
to New
he
York.
got? You think he got heat from upstairs? Do you think he got heat
I
saying
think?
we don't want that Richard guy on anymore?
I think either that's the case or he did the equation. I'm walking the tightrope. But they were some of the most interesting shows. He had me on with a guy who was supportive of Russia in the war on Ukraine, and we debated from entirely different viewpoints. And it was good and exciting radio because we went back and forth and we had different opinions, and he had some facts and I had some counterfacts. And, that's what makes good radio. Not
That's right.
hearing the same BS all that. That's another thing. At one point, he had a MAGA supporter on who was talking about how January 6th, Trump tried to calm the crowd. And he said, go there peacefully and patriotically and peacefully. And I said, yeah. And the rest of the time that was one moment. And it was a moment that was written into the piece as a CYA, cover your ass, because the rest of it was incendiary. If you don't go to that capital, you won't have a country anymore. You've got to go there. You've got to stop this, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to be with you there. Well, what the hell are you going to do? Be with them there? You're going to march into the into the Congress and the House of Representatives and stop the vote? What the hell are you talking? So when this woman said this, I said, that's BS. Oh, no, that's bullshit, I said. It's 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And all of a sudden there's silence and they go, oh.
You said the word shit.
Yeah. You
and
can't
that's a no-no.
Except that now you hear it left and right on television.
I haven't heard shit. I've heard asshole. I've heard dickhead.
Oh no, you hear bullshit. In fact, at the time
Really?
that I
Okay.
said it, Lindsey Graham had said it twice on Sunday morning shows. Trump has said bullshit. Yesterday, in the congressional hearings with Jack Smith, Jared Moskowitz left out the bull and just said, "This is shit." It was
Well,
on the
now, yeah,
air.
now, yes, they can, but I'm talking just radio in particular. There's something about the word shit that's pretty innocuous. Shit, big deal. They
Not
won't let you say
bullshit.
shit. Right. You can say
Bullshit.
bullshit, shit.
And it's
Yeah,
two
bullshit
o'clock
too.
in the morning. I don't
I
think
know.
there's
I
any
get it.
kiddies
I
up
got you.
who are going to have to clean out
Frank
their
invited me
ears.
there. I was sat there with him. I think he just wanted to take a look at me because he never met me in person. He never wanted anything to
Right.
do with me after that. He invited me down. We got into the car at 1 o'clock in the morning. I got there 2 o'clock in the morning. I sat there for a couple of hours. I never heard from him again. But Morano did a pretty darn good show. But of course,
Yeah.
if it's good, you got to get rid of him because we have to fall in lockstep with
Well,
everything.
they didn't get rid of him. It was his choice, but they
That's
told him
that's true. That's my
if you're
mistake.
going to
That's
run
true.
for city council, you ain't coming back here.
That's
So
true. How do you feel
anyway,
what they did with Curtis, Richard? What are your thoughts on the way they, Curtis,
treated him?
the way they treated
Well,
him, where they just
you're
tore him to
right.
shreds after the election, blaming everything on him?
Well, Curtis, I'll tell you a story about Curtis. I knew Curtis since 1986. I used to have him on the show in Philadelphia. Of course, then I was on ABC radio and Curtis was on the radio. And Curtis was calling people like me traitors, friends of Sodom. And the day that I got fired, I was at the station and Curtis was in the control room. And I mean, Curtis used to sit and regale my mother loved him because he regaled her with stories. He paid so much attention to my mother because he'd come to my birthday parties, you know. But
Mhm.
I had him, Asa, on my show in Philadelphia. And Curtis would go, Richard Bay thinks he's a tough guy. He thinks he's a tough guy because he grew up in Far Rockaway. Rockaway has a beach. That's what he used to say about me.
It
But when
sounds
I
like Curtis.
but when I got fired from ABC, I walked in and Curtis was sitting there with his back to me, and I said, "Well, I guess this is it, Curtis. Um, it's been nice knowing you. You want to say?"
Yeah.
He didn't even turn around to me. But then after that, I said, just forget it. And he invited me on his show several times. So, Curtis is a guy of many facets, and he didn't deserve what he got, but what do you expect? Listen, I think Lionel is about as loony as you can get these
Yeah.
days. But I wouldn't
Yeah.
even be on ABC if it wasn't for Lionel. Lionel was he lived across the street from me, and when he was on the radio, even on ABC, he would say, Richard Bay is the only one who gets it. The rest of them don't get it. He does it as a joke, as a satire,
Yeah, they don't get that.
demonstrating what?
They're too dense to get something like that.
Well, it's not. I don't think it's subtle, but it's not even a nuance. But that's not the generally the American public is not up for nuance. There were a couple of people who wrote reviews of the show who got it, and I still
Hmm.
have those reviews. They understood what we were doing.
I
But
hear
anyway, so
I hear Lionel sometimes when I can't sleep, which is almost every night. And he's just rambling and rambling and he's a shell of his former self. He's still okay, but when he did morning, I thought he was great. I
on
thought he was, let's
ABC,
say he went
well,
from, yeah, I think he went from an 8 in my mind to about a 5 now. I don't, maybe
yeah, well,
age, I have no
he
idea.
went from a 9 to a 2. But he used to have Bruce Anderson, the newsman,
Oh, he
as
was great.
his sort of foil. And
Hmm.
Bruce, he is so calm. He's such a calm, but and because Lionel is a lawyer, when they did the O.J. Simpson stuff, Lionel was brilliant. But when he went too far, Bruce would go, well, I don't know about that, Lionel. I don't know. You may have gone a bit too far there saying that. And Bruce Anderson, what a sweet man. I loved him. Oh, here's an example. Do you know who Monica Crowley is? Did you ever hear of her?
Yes, yes.
She's now a maggot in the Trump administration.
Uh-huh.
Perfect place for her. Well, they made her my co-host for a while when they got rid of Malzberg because I was beating Malzberg's ass every day with facts. I knew everything. I knew what he was going to talk about because I'd look at WorldNet Daily and Newsmax before I went on the air. So I had my counter arguments already made up. So they got rid of Malzberg and they thought Monica Crowley, she's a PhD and which she touts call me Dr. Crowley. Let me tell you, she's as dumb as a brick. I could tell you those stories too. But one day, it was when we had shock and awe. So I'm sitting there, and Bruce Anderson is sitting there with me, and we're watching on the television screen these buildings blowing up, flames scorching the sky. And I said, oh my God. And Bruce was sitting there also wrapped. And Monica Crowley walked in between us and said, shock and awe. Shock and awe, baby. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. And then she walked, away from us. So I turned to Bruce and I said, listen, maybe I've lost my bearings here. But what we just saw, wasn't that morally reprehensible? I mean, I'm glad. I mean, I'm one of those people that does support the dropping of the atom bomb on Hiroshima. But every time I see it, I don't go, oh, we turn those Japs into crispy critters. This is great. No, I'm sort of
Of course.
thinking about all the people who were killed. So I said, Bruce, isn't that morally repugnant? And he goes, yes, it is, Richard. Yes, it is. And I was glad to have Bruce there because forget about Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity's an empty vessel. Phil Boyce, who was the PD, is one of the biggest Christian hypocrites around. Malzberg was off his rocker. I mean, but Bruce Anderson was a firmament, a thing to hold on to.
He was a very comforting voice. You would
Yeah.
hear him and just feel good immediately.
Yeah.
Harley Carnes, am I right on that? Harley Carnes?
Harley Carnes has a great voice, brilliant voice.
Another great guy. Is he still around too?
Yeah, I think he's on CBS last I saw because I
I
did look
loved
him
her.
up.
I loved him. I loved his voice. Very soothing.
And-
Very good.
And George Weber, who was murdered in a
Right.
gay account, do you remember him? He was
I
the
do.
sweetest guy too. In fact,
hmm
when Paul Harvey was retiring, George told me that George Weber went into Phil Boyce's office and said, listen, I think I've got the perfect replacement for Paul Harvey because he tells great stories. He's got a great voice. Richard Bay. And Phil Boyce said, get out of my office.
Well, that's the kind of guy he was. I heard bad stories, but I heard a few good ones, but mostly bad. But we can, in retrospect, we can talk about all these guys in derogatory terms because they're gone. They can't defend themselves.
Oh, listen, he did something good. Phil Boyce did something good.
What's that?
He
Tell me
put
one thing
Curtis
so
and-
I can.
He put Curtis and Kubi together, which was
Oh yeah, yeah. The
Come
second
to
time
believe-
around too.
yeah, both times.
Yeah.
And
all right.
and that was a great combination.
Hmm.
You know?
Well, that something they truly hated it. Not hate. Hate's a strong word. They were clashing in the real sense of the word every day.
Oh yeah.
At least they
Yeah,
gave
yeah,
at
that's
least they
true.
gave the appearance that they were doing. If
Oh,
they
no,
weren't
that's
doing
true.
it, they were damn good actors because it seemed like they were really clashing, and it was
Oh,
great.
and,
That was great radio.
Kubi detests Curtis, even to this day.
And what about the callers, Richard? Let's talk about the caliber of the callers. I'll
At
give you a
ABC?
typical, yeah, just generally speaking, talk radio the way it is now. I'll give you an example. Hey, Greg Kelly. Hey, Greg, I love you, Greg. I can't wait. Oh, Greg, I love you. Thanks for your service, Greg. You've been so great, Greg. Thank you, Greg. Your father was wonderful, Greg. I just want to talk about Trump. He's great. This is not radio as we know it, Richard. This is some kind of bullshit. There's the word bullshit kind of mutual admiration society that
Yeah.
just is the least entertaining thing you could ever imagine. I mean, that's the way talk radio is today. Right wing to the core. Any other viewpoint is worthless.
Well, I'm living in Florida at now. I try to say that I'm back and forth to New York, which I am every 5 or 6 weeks. So I get a dose of sanity. But down here, there's only one talk station in my area. It's called FTL, and it's from morning to night. People who are hateful or stupid. They do have Brian Kilmeade on it sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
they have a woman named Joyce Kaufman who at one point, when she thought one of her chosen was going to lose an election, she told them to get their guns and go into the hills and fight the government. Then you used to have Ben Shapiro, who speaks like an auctioneer on helium. I'm telling
Yep.
you, this is what's happening to us now. And if we don't support Israel, the whole Middle East will go. I mean, how you could listen. And of course, Mark Levin, who has another voice, like as if he sucked helium.
Mm-hmm.
They're traitors. The liberals are traitors. I mean, how can you listen to this?
I know.
And
Just
people who
just
can listen,
vocal ability. Just sheer vocal ability alone. You can't hear those guys. I
well,
can.
we can all go back and blame Rush Limbaugh, but he had a talent and had a magnificent voice. He was the Luciano Pavarotti of talk show hosts, you know? I mean,
Until he
Bob
smoked too
Grant
many
came.
cigars and his voice went too at one point. That was a shame when he got sick.
Oh, well, here's one for you.
Mm-hmm.
I used to, I had to listen to Rush because I was in the studio at ABC, and they used to have the Rush Limbaugh minutes, and Rush would come on. And during my show with Steve Malzberg. So at one point, I mean, and he was slurring his words, and he had really bad pauses, and was not articulating well. And so they had a commercial, and I said to Steve, Steve, if I didn't know better, I'd say he was on drugs. I said, I've been around a lot of people on drugs, and that's what they sound like. And he said, oh, you're not going to say that on the air, are you? And I said, no, I'm not going to say that on the air because I can't prove it. And of course, several months later, we found out that he was on hillbilly heroin the whole time.
Mm. There's a
Do you
couple of
remember
hundred
that?
of these, a couple of hundred of these pills a day. I mean,
Oxycodone.
I
Yeah.
heard some outrageous number that he used to take per day, and I said, "How can anybody do that?" I don't know how you could stand up after taking because you need more and more. I guess when
Yeah,
10
I
doesn't
guess.
do it, you need 20, and 20 you need 100. I don't know.
And not
I've
only
never
that,
taken it. I'm afraid.
he was buying them illegally from his housemate. So, who had another prescription. But
Did you
no, there
know
were no
Rush behind the
charges.
scenes?
No, I was never there. Lynn Samuels, who I also loved and was a close friend,
Me too.
she she was there when Rush was there, and she said, he was a really nice guy off the air. I really liked him. And he would come in and he'd have like soup stains on his tie. He looked like a nerd back then. And he had this wife who was a harridan who would yell at him and order him around, and he would cower before her. She was the
I heard
boss in
about
the
that. I
family.
heard about the wife.
Oh, you
The wife
did? Yeah.
wore the pants. The wife wore the pants, as they
Right.
say.
Right.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Hey, let me rattle off some talk show giants from the past. Give me your first thoughts. Bob Grant.
Really talented. Um, trafficked in racist tropes and hate, but also a very interesting man in between. and talented. I mean, when he called David Dinkins the washroom attendant, how can you ever look at a picture of David Dinkins and not see him with an apron on with towels, you know? I mean, and you know, the way he talked about some people was you couldn't you couldn't get it out of your mind because he was so precise. But like I said, he had his hatreds. I liked it. We were friends. I used to have him on my TV show and also had a good
And
voice.
you know what's funny about that, the TV? He never came across well on TV, in my opinion. When he was
Yeah.
great when you couldn't see him. The voice itself was wonderful. But when the camera
Yeah.
did not like it, did not
Well,
like him.
he had a toupee too, which didn't help.
That's true.
Well,
And
well,
he resembled Burgess Meredith a little bit, and that was true.
that's right. And my friend Jay Diamond does an exacting imitation of Bob Grant.
That was
Well,
my next guy. That
pal.
was my next guy, Richard. That was my next guy. You read my
Oh,
mind.
Jay Diamond?
What about Jay?
Oh, well, he's a pal. So far be it from me to say anything critical of him, but extremely talented. He also, at least when he was on the radio, he came up with stuff that I I had never thought about, you know. I mean, he did one whole riff. There was a point in time when they tried to start a comedy channel in New York. I forget, it was an FM station. And they asked me to have a slot for a week, and they asked Jay to have a slot. I listened every night to Jay, and he did a riff off the top of his head about obey, obey, obey. They're always telling you to obey. And he had all these different situations. I can't do it and I can't remember it exactly, but it was so brilliant. It should be, you know, on a record somewhere.
Now tell me something.
Yeah.
He's a recluse, Richard. Nobody can get in touch. I want him on this program many times. I can't get in
Yeah.
touch with him.
Well, I speak to him.
You have to give me his number. I won't bother him, I promise. Just
I'll
one
give
time.
you his
One time.
number, but I speak to
But
him on a regular,
he he was maybe, Richard, I'm sorry to interrupt you. He was maybe the now you're taking into account all these greats. He was possibly in the top five, undoubtedly, in my mind.
Oh
He
yeah,
was
yeah.
possibly the best I have ever heard in my life. At the top of his game, he was right there.
And his impressions. He could sound just like Al Sharpton. He could sound just like Bob Grant. He could sound just like Bill Clinton. I mean, you know,
Did
he
a
was
great Bing
incredible.
Crosby, great Bing
Right.
Crosby too.
He loves Bing Crosby. And he met Bing
And he had a
Crosby
nice singing
once.
voice too.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Who
here's
else
another one.
now?
You mentioned her, and I one of my favorites, Lynn Samuels.
Oh, Liv Samuels. Oi, New York, it's Lynn Samuels. Here I am. I'm on the radio. Woo! There was nothing more New York ever on New York radio than Lynn Samuels. You know, people complained about her accent. I loved her accent.
Yeah, me
I
too.
love the New York accent. In fact, I had a girlfriend from Queens who had the dog and car and coffee and I loved hearing it. There's a movie called Someone to Watch Over Me with a Lorraine Bracco who has that accent. And she finds out that her husband, who's a cop, is cheating with a socialite, Mimi Rogers. And she just goes, "Are you cheating on me, Tommy? Are you cheating on me? Come on, Tommy, look at me. Look at me, Tommy, look at me. You're cheating on me." And then she smashes him right in the face. And I said, wow, that's the kind of woman that I need. And I loved
Hey,
Lynn Samuels.
Lynn used to she used to mix it up with everybody. That's what was great about her.
And the other thing about her is this, is that she would start, like, what was it that one day when I started to realize this, she wanted to talk about, I don't know, game shows or something. And I rolled my eyes and said, oh, I'm listening in the car radio. I don't want to listen to this. Well, I kept listening for a whole half hour because her comedy, her insights, her analysis of game shows was so funny, individual, unique. there's not, they broke the mold after her, you know?
And they found her tragically dead on the floor for a couple of days in her village apartment, I think.
Right.
Do you
Well,
remember
after
that?
that was over, they asked me to come on Sirius FM and host
Mm,
a tribute because she had a show on Sirius FM, and
yeah.
whenever she was off or on vacation, I was the one that filled in for her. So we had a tribute where we had some of her family and some of her fans.
How
And
about
yeah,
Barry Gray? Barry Gray.
well, I've got a story about him. I like Barry Gray, but Barry Gray, is Barry Gray the one with the Southern accent? There's two Barrys. Who was the
No,
other
Barry
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 that did?
Farber. You're thinking of
Oh,
Farber.
yeah, Barry Gray, I don't know, except that my grandmother listened to him every night and would say, "Oh, you know what Barry Gray said last night? Oh, I heard Barry Gray." You know, it was Barry Farber that I have a story
Well,
about.
Barry Farber was that guy. That guy. That was Barry Farber. Yeah,
He
that's
was like, "Oh,
he was
oh,
very. He
are
was
you telling me?"
to the right of anybody you could think of.
And with that hayseed accent, you know.
Yeah. Mhm. What do you think of
He,
him?
well, at one point, I had a very conservative producer that they brought in to Channel 9. And he saw me as a liberal communist. And we had a producer on the show named Dusty, whose stepfather was one of the premier Russian specialists, and whose mother was Katrina Vanderhovel,
Mm.
who's of The Nation, I believe it is. And they had Phil Donahue over for dinner. And at dinner, she said to him, "Phil, would you do the show with Richard Bay? Oh, he's very smart. It'll be a great interview. You're going to love this." So he said, "Sure, sure, I'll do it." So the day of that he was booked, he was coming on with another Russian apologist named Vladimir Posner.
Hmm.
And because he was trying to, after Gorbachev, he was trying to foster better relations between the US and Russia. So this guy, Kavanaugh, comes up and says, "I don't want two communists to be interviewing each other. You're not going to interview Donahue. You're going to interview the communist, the Russian guy. And Barry Farber is going to interview Phil Donahue because he stands up for America." So anyway, we go down there, and Barry Farber is off his rocker going, "Mr. Donahue, why should anybody take you seriously when you have a show that has strippers and hookers and all sorts of deviants running around up there? Why should we even listen to you when you talk politics?" And the interview went on from there. It was just embarrassing. So this is all over. And upstairs, I went up to Donahue and said, "Mr. Donahue, I apologize, but I have no control over how they run this. There's a producer here." So Phil says, "I understand. I understand." So the girl that had set this up was crying her eyes out. And she said, "Oh, I'm so embarrassed. I told him he would come and Richard would do a great interview. What am I going to tell my parents now? This is..." So she's crying. So I said to the producer, I said, "We could have had a great interview with Donahue down there." And, I would ask him tough questions. I always do. I said, "But you ruined it. And what we had was garbage, garbage." And, you know, he said, "Well, guests on this show will be treated any way that I tell the hosts to treat them." So I said, "Yeah, except for a few weeks ago, we had a woman on who said she had an affair with Ronald Reagan. And she said at one point that she had been an old girlfriend of yours and to say hello. And you asked me to treat her with good kid gloves. And she was an aged person. So I was very kind with her and gentle. But when you want your girlfriend treated well, that's a different story." She goes, "She's not my girlfriend." I said, "She was your girlfriend." And he goes, if you say that word girlfriend one more time, I'm going to knock your block off. So I'm sitting in a chair and I went, girlfriend. And he comes charging at me and knocks me off the back of the chair. I'm on the floor and he's screaming at me. Andrew Jackson fought 100 duels day. He goes, stand up, meet me in the parking lot. He goes, let's have it out between us in the parking lot. And I stood up. I've done this several times in my life when somebody's threatening me and I want them to throw the first punch so that I won't be at fault. I took my arms and I held them against my body as tightly as I could. And he's spitting and yelling in my face. Andrew Jackson had duels. I said, Andrew Jackson was in the 19th, beginning of the 19th century. We're at the end of the 20th century. He goes, what are you, little wimp, you little commie wimp? Come and fight me, be a man. And then I stopped and I said out loud to everybody there, I think an assault just took place in the workplace. And I think human resources has to hear of this. So I went to human resources and I told them what happened. And I said, look, I don't want the guy to lose his job. But two things. He has to apologize to me, number one. And number two, he has to promise that something like this will never happen again while we're at work. So the guy went over and talked to him, and I went over. And an hour later, he's still there. No apology, no promise. So I went back to human resources and I said, listen, I told you what happened. You did nothing. I think I'm going to have to call the police so I can have a record of this assault that'll legally stand up. Okay? And whether WWOR will be included in the repercussions of this remains to be seen. But if you're not in there talking to him in the next 10 minutes, I'm calling the police. So he went in and he told the guy this, and he said, you little wimp, you human resources midget, shut up, get out of my office, get it. And he picked up, and they told him to go to his office, pick up his, his books and stuff, and he was thrown out of the studio. And actually, that was the start of the Richard Bey Show, because if he hadn't been there, it wouldn't be the Richard Bey Show.
You see how things work out?
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible when something looks so terrible and it looks like a big confrontation ends up to be in your favor.
That's a good story, though, isn't it?
It's a great story that I've never heard told. You know, some of these stories go around and around and around. They have different versions. I've never heard any version of that one. That's a good one. I never cared for Barry Farber on the radio. Wasn't my guy. He was not appointment radio for me.
He's a nice guy. He's a nice guy.
But I'm sure he was, but he was so rigid and so narrow-minded. I always thought of him that way. You know, immediately, if you disagree, you're not patriotic. You don't understand what this country is about. That kind of thing. That drives me crazy. And that's the kind of thing that they do on every one of these conservative stations. They act holier than thou. And they're up here and they're going to talk to you. I'll leave you with this, Richard, because we gotta run because we can talk forever. But let's do part 2 again. I'll leave you with this. Here's what they do, Richard, on talk radio. I said it on one of my crackpot videos. When the caller calls, first of all, the whole thing's about a caller. The host plays a huge part, don't get me wrong, but the caller means a great deal to this genre, to this format. The caller calls, Richard. He talks, but when the host speaks, the engineer turns down the caller so the host can speak. And you get a choppy conversation and you get nothing back and forth.
This is news to you, but at ABC they had something called the dump button. And it was something that, if I remember, that you could press this button and the caller would be not broadcast, only your voice. So
yeah, well, that existed. Yeah, that existed too. But just for a conversation, just for the listener, when they actually want to hear an actual exchange, they can't get it because as soon as the host talks, the caller is turned down, and you have just
Right.
an overwhelming diatribe by the host, and that's not radio.
Right. I got it. All right. Well,
That's
thank you for
that's
this.
my
This
final
was fun.
that's my final complaint. Anything we didn't touch on that you had in your mind before we say goodbye? Because I do, any topic that you wanted to talk about, I didn't get to. Anything?
Oh, come on. So we'll do it next time. You know,
All right.
we
Well,
covered a lot of ground, but I enjoyed your your treatise on WABC. The problem is you got this guy, Katsimides there. He's not a radio guy, and
yeah.
he's the grand poobah over everything, you know?
He
I mean,
bought the
who's
thing
doing
as his plaything. He bought it for 12 mil, which was a drop in the bucket for him.
I know, but what I don't understand is WOR is doing a lot worse in the ratings.
The
I
morning
don't
show, I
understand.
like Larry Mente a lot. He's a great guy. He's just not working.
Yeah.
It's just not working. Everybody chimes in from the engineers room. That's what I can't stand. This one has an opinion. She's the board op. You got this person chiming in. I thought the
Who
show
else
was
is on
supposed to be.
there? Well,
You
it's
have
Mark
You have
Simone.
Natalie Vaca, who works on WOR for years, but she's a major part of Larry's show in the morning. Where Larry will be talking, all of a sudden you hear a voice, and it's the board op. Shut up. I don't have anything against her
Right,
personally, but I tuned in
right,
to hear Larry. Then the newswoman chimes in. Then the weather guy chimes in, the traffic person. So you got a
yeah,
5-person
right.
talking thing here, and it's just,
Well, the other
and you
day
can't.
I mentioned to somebody that I was on the radio in New York, and she said, "Oh, did you know Joan Hamburg?" So that's what she got excited over.
They tossed Joan unceremoniously off of WABC. You heard that, right?
Yeah, I didn't know that. I knew she wasn't on now, but come on, what is she, 120 years old?
Something like that. She
Hmm.
would do a tape show, and she dared to come from a different place politically whenever the subject was broached. And forget it. I can tell you that is the reason you don't hear Joan Hamburg, not the fact that she's 125. I'm
Oh,
telling you.
listen, before the Iraq War, during that period, they got rid of me. They got rid of Reverend Byron Schaefer, who was the one anti-war guy on Religion Online. They got rid of Lynn Samuels. And when Curtis and Kuby would go at it, Phil Boyce would send um, Kuby home so Curtis could have the microphone all to himself. Over and over again, Kuby was sent home.
Really? I never knew that.
Yeah.
You see Kubi around town ever? You're in Florida
Not
now, I
in,
forgot.
yeah,
But you
I
get to
saw
New York.
yeah, over the years I've seen it. What usually happens is we get together with Kubi, Jay Diamond, and Scott Pellegrino, who's another another card. Do you know who he is?
How come that name rings a bell, but I can't place him? Who's that?
He's a guy that used to call up and he would call up Bob Grant. He still does it once in a while, but he calls up stations making believes he's a far right. Hey, I'm a New Yorker here, and you know what? You can't let these blacks take over, Bob. You're absolutely right. The blacks think they run this city, you know? You got to stop them somehow. He tries to lead the hosts
He's
into
putting everybody on, right? He's just putting
he's
everybody
putting
on.
everybody on. Yeah.
I know that name, and I got to look out for him now. All right, Richard, I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on.
It was my pleasure, and all
And
my
we made a
best to
lot of
you.
I think we made a lot of enemies today, I think.
Oh, do I give a shit? I'm going to be 75. I can say shit on this show, right?
That's right.
Um,
Anything you want.
I
You
mean,
could even
that's
say
one thing.
shit, you can say fuck, you can
That's
say whatever
one.
you want.
That's one good thing about getting older, and especially uh, not working every day. You don't give a shit. You
You don't
can
give a
really
shit.
speak your mind.
Just say shit as many times as you care to say shit. It's
Uh,
beautiful. I'll,
all
s- I'll see you next time, man. Thank you.
right, man. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.